I love that you mentioned the fact that you thought long-term about insurance, because it's one of the most timeless industries ever. Regardless of recession, economic time, it's not like real estate that's up and down. It's like you really thought long-term. I want to ask, because I did see the clip where you mentioned that you had a 20-year time horizon. And in this year, in this day and age in social media, everyone's trying to make $1 million this year, 2 or 3 million bucks over the next 2 or 3 years. What was the impetus for you to actually think long-term? Where did that come from? Because it's such obviously, we just came literally today from interviewing Bobby and Sofia Castro. They exited their company. It was at $1 billion valuation. And they were saying the same thing, that every time he tried a different business opportunity, he was always thinking short-term, 1 year, 2 years. The second he zoomed out and said, fuck it, I'm going to get rich slow, so to speak, and zoomed out, that's when things really started to work. Even when I interviewed, for example, John Paul DeJoria, founder of Patron Tequila, and Paul Mitchell, shampoo and conditioner, he articulated to me one of the most profound points ever. He said that multi-billionaires, because he started not one, but 2 multi-billion-dollar companies, he said, they think in terms of 2 or 3 decades or more. Billionaires think in terms of, a decade, maybe 2. People make a couple $100 million bucks, think in terms of a decade. People make tens of millions of dollars, think maybe, 5 to 10 years. People who make a couple $1 million bucks think in terms of 2 or 3 years, all the way, down to where the lowest paid people in the world think about their wage per hour, right? Like minimum wage. So the time horizon with which they evaluate time. But I'm curious, for you, where did that come from? Where did the vision of...
I read a book, by the way, both of them have a very good point. I read a book called Toyota Way. And Toyota Way talked about, how Toyota went from looking at the assembly line, how it was taking a minute and 48 seconds to solve a problem, and they would bring it down to minute and 28 seconds to minute and 11. So eventually it was like 59 seconds where problems were being addressed the moment it's coming up in the assembly line, and you ring the bell and somebody shows up and a boom, fix, 59 seconds, address, next, boom. So you sit there and you think about how these guys think, right? Toyota, 20-year business plan in Toyota is a short-term business plan. Do you know the oldest company in the world? The oldest company in the world, where it's based out of? It's out of Japan. It's 1,500 years old. Do you know how many companies in Japan are over 100 years old? Do you know the number? 50,000 companies in Japan are over 100 years old. How are you able to have 50,000 companies over 100 years old? What is the mindset behind that? Well, one of the things about building a company in Japan, the idea is, if you're my son, I'm building it because I want to keep close. I want to keep the family close to each other. So I'm developing the next layer. You're developing the next layer. He's developed, because now family is going to be fine, because the business is going to be taken care of our last name, right? So then the business stays for 300 years, 400 years, 500 years, 180 years. So meaning I've done my part. Now it's your part. I got the business from my dad. Now I'm going to set you up to be the CEO one day. Now you're going to do this. Your brother's going to do this. Your sister's going to pass the baton, right? So when you sit there and I remember one time I'm competing with this one girl. It was her and another guy. And at one event, she gets up and she's speaking and she calls me out. And then I go up and I speak. I said, let me tell you something. I said, you have me maybe in this area, in this other area, in this area. There's one area in this business you don't have me. And you will never be able to compete with me because you don't have this other area. I said, it's not even fair. Matter of fact, to not have you go through mental issues in the future, I would highly recommend you not competing with me, because it's going to disappoint you. And you're going to live the rest of your life saying how you couldn't beat me, because there's this one thing that you don't have that I know I have. Now, that sounds a little bit arrogant. It may sound a little bit cocky, but I was convinced this was my edge. And you know what the edge was? Here's what my edge is. In success, there's 4 things. Outwork, which a lot of people do, but for periods of time. Out-improve, which a lot of people do, but for periods of time. Out-strategize, which a lot of people could do for periods of time. You know what the last one is? Outlast. Most people cannot last. Most people are going to get $1 million bucks, they're happy. Most people are going to get a 10 million bucks, they're going to be happy. When I first walked in here, like, hey, how did it feel with your exit? And I said, it was expected. It's not like it's a great feeling. I told you the story of my wife and what happened, but I knew this was coming. And I know the next 3, 4, 5 events that I'm solving for is coming, right? The challenge is going to be when that success comes your way and people say, oh, I'm never going to stop. Okay, we'll find out. Oh, Pat, I'm going to be your biggest earner. Cool. We'll find out. Wait till you make $250,000 a year. Wait till you make $1 million a year. Wait till you got $1 million in the bank. Let's see what time you still wake up in the morning. Let's see if you got $10 million in the bank. Let's see what you're eventually going to do. Then it happens to you. And then you're like, damn, she was right. He was right. I got $1 million in the bank. I don't have the urgency I had before. Bingo. That was your vision. $1 million.
Right.
Yeah, Dana White. Yo, Dana got $350 million in 2016 when the deal was done. He said, da. Yeah, he's going back to work the same exact, way he was doing it. Look what he's done with, UFC to where it's at during COVID while everybody else, he became the #1 commissioner. Everybody's targeting that. Of course, he had a terrible incident this last 2 weeks ago, whatever he did. He's already called himself out for what he's done. But you look at him as a commissioner. You look at him as a guy that's running an entire sport. During COVID, he's the MVP, 2-year MVP, back-to-back. What happened with him? He got the money. Guess what the marketplace is realizing? That guy's a big thinker. $350 million didn't stop him. How many people stop at a point? A lot of people do. A lot of people do.
Did that ever happen to you?
Yeah, of course, 1,000,000%. Of course. It happened to me in 2007 when a new guy came and beat me. And I had to, at this one event, the speaker said, this year we're going to give the MVP in a completely different way. We're going to give the MVP. We're going to have the runner-up give it to the winner. So they bring me and him up. And they say, and the MVP goes to, they say him.
Shit.
And I have to give the award to him. So I'm like, okay. I gave it to him. I handed it to him and I said to him, whispered to him, I said, listen, I got to give it to you. You outworked me this year. I wasn't paranoid enough this year. I wasn't fully focused for the last 12 months, but I'm going to tell you this. He says, what's that? Never for the rest of your life will this ever happen again. It's game over. That level of paranoia was reminded in that moment. One of the most important books I read by Andy Grove, it said, only the paranoid survive. We lose paranoia. We run our businesses as if it's always going to keep growing and you're always going to be successful, and you don't think that it could go bankrupt tomorrow. You lose the paranoia, you become too cocky. It's like the guy that's a boxer constantly winning. Then he boxes like this and he gets knocked out. You lost your paranoia. Happens to all of us, but hopefully you hope that happens to you early on in your career, that you can always go back to it and say, hey, I know you just got a big check. Remember, you could get knocked out. Hey, I know you're getting a lot of eyeballs. Remember, hey, I know you're doing this. Are you still reading? Are you still feeding your mind? Are you still researching? Are you still preparing the questions like you did before? Are you still Are you still recruiting? Are you still paying heavy salaries to recruit the right talent? Are you becoming cheap? What are you doing right now? Are you that reminder can always go back into that. So not going to sit here and tell you I haven't fallen for that. But when I stop, it will be because I'm done.
Yeah.
There's only one person that can stop me with what I'm doing next, and it's not going to be me.